Here's Ben Shapiro. I'm curious as to who he thinks he's speaking to in terms of explaining how to deal with the cops. But here's Ben Shapiro explaining, based upon his, extensive experience of being rolled up on by the cops because he's walking around as a teenager or he's walking around as a young adult, explaining how you're supposed to be acting.
I'm confused as to why you believe that if basic traffic stops are not done, suddenly the crime rate will go down. It is worthwhile noting, by the way, Memphis has one of the highest violent crime rates in America. Memphis's Scorpion unit was founded by the current police chief who just disbanded it because of the problem of violent crime in Memphis. In fact, according to Neighborhood Scout, you have a 1 in 12 chance if you live in Memphis of being the victim of either a violent or a property crime. That's how bad crime is in the city of Memphis. And so the solution from this Ivy League professor at Brooklyn Law School, it's an ivory tower person, is that what if the police just don't police anymore? Great solution, guys. It'll work out amazing.
My really strong sentiment is that to decrease violence between law enforcement officials and the public is to decrease the contact and intervention that police have with the public.
Fewer traffic stops.
Exactly. They don't need to be, police do not need to administer stops in basic traffic violations. I know all of us, I can confidently say, have engaged in a minor traffic violation.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and virtually all of us have gotten a traffic ticket at some point. And you know what all of us don't do? Run away from the police officers or fail to obey commands. And not to quote early Chris Rock, but you should obey commands from the police. This is a good idea. This is, if you want to avoid a bad interaction with a cop, the best way to avoid a bad interaction with a cop is not to, number one, commit a crime, and number two, not to disobey the police officer when he tells you what to do. Now, again, that does not excuse police brutality. It does not mean these officers shouldn't go to jail. They violated the law. We talked about this yesterday. But if you want to actually reduce the number of interactions between one population group and the cops, one of the things you're going to need to do is reduce the crime rate among this population group so they don't have the interactions with the cops.
Oh, my God. Pause it for a second. Hold on. I mean, first off, it's hard to know what is more horrifically disgusting in this situation in terms of what he's saying. But in terms of like his vast experience, and you listen to what the cops do, in about 30 seconds, you could Google, and maybe you should just do that, about the story about what the tape shows.
Yeah.
In terms of Tyree Nichols, in terms of like the commands that he was being given by the 5 different cops, none of which he could comply with because he was either already complying with those commands.
Show us your hands as they're holding his hands. Get to the ground as he's on the ground.
Yes. I mean, one of two situations were existing. And there was like, literally, I think they documented something like 24, 30 commands that were impossible.
Dozens, yes.
Impossible to follow. So his experience, Ben Shapiro's, of listening to the cops apparently is maybe slightly different from people who have been subjected to far more scrutiny from the cops. We also know that his whole concept of community, of law breaking, attracting more police attention, largely speaking, depending on what era it's been, it's because the police have decided, and society in many respects, white society has decided that we're going to pay more attention to the potential or the actual law breaking of one cohort of the population versus another. Everyone not everyone apparently knows the implications of like the stop and frisk policies that we had in this. Everybody knows that, in a place like Ferguson, traffic violations are used as a funding mechanism for the city or the municipality or the town or wherever it is.
And how about drug crimes? Just because this statistic stands out in my mind, that black and white Americans, it's a little outdated. I think it's from like 2016. They use drugs at similar rates, but black Americans are nearly 3 times more likely to be arrested or charged, or not charged, but at least targeted for arrest for using drugs. So like that is just disproves his entire thesis there.
I mean, and this isn't a case. I mean, this isn't a case of someone who was doing anything of what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is full on dog whistle stuff.
Certain groups of people, he keeps saying.
Group and the cops, one of the things you're going to need to do is reduce the crime rate among this population group so they don't have the interactions with the cops. And this is not exactly rocket science. And yet the solution, apparently, is that we stop the policing, which, of course, results in precisely the opposite of what you seek to achieve. You get fewer interactions with the cops, that's for sure. You do get many more interactions with criminals. This is why you have genius Mehdi Hassan on MSNBC claiming that it's time to abolish the police. Why is it so radical, says Mehdi Hassan, to abolish the police from his security-protected studio over at MSNBC?
Stop it. Security and cops aren't the same thing. I saw these people make it, even like the Capitol Hill police, in my opinion, are not the same as the cop, like NYPD that's sitting on the corner waiting to like bust somebody. And like, the thing is like, we do have like our per capita murder rate is about 3 times higher than the OECD. We do have a lot of violence in this country. But I would ask like Shapiro, like, what do you think is causing the violence among certain communities? Because we have like all sorts of debates over like my entire lifetime. Charles Murray would basically say like, that's inherent biologically, and we're not going to be able to do anything about that. Whereas other people that are more in line with reality and the history of this country is that those groups and certain populations experience more crimes because they don't have a relationship with the police that is conducive to creating order. So like cops, like in many communities, first of all, they don't like solve murders. Like we have a horrible murder clearance rate across this country. What I think like the defund thing, what is purposely missed is people want people like detectives solving crimes in any community. They don't want people like some schmuck with a power trip sitting on the corner policing small things like fare evasion or like the broken window style policing that led America to become the #1 cager of human beings in the entire world. Like not per capita, in terms of raw numbers, we have more human beings in cages because of the approach that is like we just can't. We act like we've been defunding the police the whole time. No, we've been doing exactly what Shapiro wants.
But the security example and the Capitol Police example, like I saw people were giving AOC crap on Twitter because she voted to increase police funding for the Capitol Police. Those are different entities, and they're actually models of what should be happening with policing is protection and like hopefully not overreach. What defund people, what activists are saying is that black communities are being over-policed and they're being violently assaulted because of that over-policing.
And there's absolutely no reason to have a person with a gun and the ability to arrest somebody, approach the car because they have run a stop sign or run a red light or failed to make a left turn signal. There's absolutely no reason to do it. And in every other sort of aspect of society, they see government encroachment as some type of authoritarian move. The idea that the IRS would audit or fine somebody for not paying their taxes is jackboot stormtroopers coming in. But the idea that you'd have basically a militarized personnel approach your car because you just took a left turn where you weren't supposed to, of course, it's going to make people, jumpy and whatnot. And if society was aware, criminals and non-criminals alike was aware that the person coming up to issue a ticket did not have the power to arrest them or search their car for other things, there would be far less violent interactions, period, end of story. And you would get far less violent interactions. That person coming to the car is just there to give you a ticket. Mm-hmm. In the same way that, like, we don't need to arm parking ticket, meter maids, because those aren't confrontations that are going to go beyond the fact that there is a ticket being issued.
And say you pull someone over and they have some sort of like outstanding warrant for a violent crime, that ticketing officer can refer that person to the police, right? It's just not. I don't even think you need to do that function. I agree.
You don't need to have that function. If people have an outstanding warrant for a violent crime, then the police will have more time to find that person because they're not out, harassing people who are not engaged in a crime.
They just have this kind of 24 style conception of what policing is. And I'm just saying, even in those narrow instances, it's not necessary.
The having police serve that function is having them serve the function of control, period, end of story. That is it. You do not have them come out and use every interaction that they have with the public as a mechanism in which to surveil them, and a mechanism in which to assess them, unless it is about control. And not just in that moment, but also the implication that could happen is also about control. It's the same way, like, when DeSantis has these laws that causes school systems to hide all their books because they don't know what happens in that moment. That is what our policing system does. It creates a constant sense of anxiety and fear against a population that knows that they should have some anxiety and fear when the police show up at their car, regardless of what whether they have done anything or not. Like, Ben Shapiro has no ability to even accept or be aware that the dynamic between him and a cop is different because of his skin color.
Yeah, but he knows that. He wants there to be some sort of level of control for the cops to act as an occupying force in black communities.
There's a freak out, I think, going on right now with the loss of, like, you see, like, Barry Weiss's Thomas Chatterton William, the Chateau friend, saying, "Oh, you smell pot everywhere." I feel, and then you also see people like, we need to really crack down on fare evasion because cops lost, like, Kennedy, what's his name? Kennedy III said that, it used to be when you smelled marijuana in a car, you could search that car.
Right.
And when it became decriminalized, you couldn't do that. Cops hate that because that's what they want to do, is
they want a predicate.
pry into your
they
shit.
want a predicate in which to go in and surveil and control. And the fewer of those predicates they have, the less justification they have for that interaction. And the inverse is true. That's from the perspective of cops. But if cops are frustrated by that, it's a good indication of, like, that's what we should be doing to minimize these things. There is no evidence whatsoever that type of invasive policing reduces crime. This just doesn't exist. Far more evidence that getting lead out of the environment and making for healthier human beings reduces crime.
Reducing baseline desperation probably helps too.
Yeah. Community investment.